Hello, everybody out there. I'm sorry to be late again. Something is going on with my computer on Fridays, apparently. I am just um, not the way that I would like to start videos with you all. But I am not super technologically savvy. And I've been doing things in the same exact ways and the same exact orders. And for some reason on Fridays, my computer is just deciding to be buggy and throwing me a pretty big monkey wrench into my my system here for trying to trying to share with you guys. So apologies for being a few minutes late to our live scheduled live video. And again, I find myself back on my heels because when I get so thrown by what I don't understand the technology is doing, then I'm thinking about all of these other things. And what I really want to do is talk with you guys about some theater today. So that is my long apology to you all for not being punctual with this afternoon's video or last week's video. But today I'll try my best to let all of that stuff go and just talk with you all today about probably my favorite period of history of theater. And this will be, I promise, this is it. I'm going to leave the history of theater alone for a little bit after this. But I thought it was very important to go back to the beginning and talk about the Greek theater traditions, because many of the traditions that were established in the early years of Greek theater are still alive, and many of the words that we use to this day are still used very regularly, and they come from this very rich history. And the reason why the history on Greek theater is so rich, and we know a lot about the theater that went on in those days, centuries ago now. I mean, we're talking about, 3 and 4 and 5th and 6th century BC, you guys. Oh, I'm so glad you're here, Robin. I'm sorry that I was a few minutes late getting my video started. But today we're talking about Greek theater. So what is the first thing that you all think of when you think of Greek theater? I am betting, even though I'm not a betting man, I am betting that many of you probably think about the Greek drama and comedy masks, or sometimes this one's called tragedy and comedy. So it's really tragedy and comedy masks. And one is super smiley and happy and everything, and that's the comedy one. And then the other one's really sad. And those images have lasted for a very long time, and they are still very much used today. And when we talk about theater, even today, I think a lot of people still use those categories in some ways, shape, or in lots of ways. There are many modern day stories that lean towards the comedic, and there are many modern day stories that lead towards the dramatic or the tragic, if you will. And the cool thing about modern theater and how far we've come since these days is we are now blending all of those things in the stories that we tell today. And I find elements of both in most plays that I see these days, which I think is pretty cool. But Anyway, I wanted to share with you guys just some really interesting and very simple things that were a part of the Greek theater, and how the Greek theater was set up was really, really revolutionary for its time. And a lot of theaters to this day are still kind of set up similarly to the architecture in the way that Greek theaters were. So I'm gonna share some notes with you that I've been jotting down all morning. Greek theater. The English words for tragedy and comedy come from the ancient language of the Greeks. Although the Greeks were not the first to perform plays, there were still plays long before the era of the Greek theater. Their philosophers and their writers proposed several theories and wrote down volumes for us to study even to this day on the form and the purpose of theater, which I think is pretty cool. Most notably, my favorite philosopher and the one who wrote the most about the form and the purpose of theater is Mr. Aristotle. Okay, so Greek theater, you guys, largely took place outdoors. They did not have theater buildings with ceilings on them in the way that we often see theater today. They had what were called amphitheaters. Amphitheaters are still around today, mostly used for musical venues. But they basically are a large area where there is normally a natural slant, like a hillside, where all of the audience sits, and then they're looking down upon just a big open area. And that was the beginnings of what the Greek theaters looked like. In the beginning, they were large open areas found near cities, and the audience would stand what? They would stand or sit. Some of the wealthier could afford seats, and listen and watch a chorus of actors. Now that's an interesting use of the word chorus, but really it just means a large group of actors. It's not necessarily that they're always singing, okay? But a chorus of actors chanting in unison and singing. They also did singing too, about the adventures of the gods or human heroes. And towards the end of the 6th century BC, the structures for Greek theater became much more elaborate because Greek theater got really popular among the people. And as it got more and more popular, theaters became larger, with some structures accommodating as many as 15,000 people at one time. That is a gigantic theater. I cannot think of a single theater to this day that operates with an audience of that size. So it was super, super popular. And population was a lot lower back in those days. So to get 15,000 people out to see the same play was incredible. They must have been pretty good. So now I want to talk about the architecture of those outdoor amphitheaters. Okay, the Greek outdoor theaters were divided into 4 distinct areas, basically. And I hope that this, I got tripped up on trying to upload an image for this video, and I hope that image made its uploading for you guys. So when you click on this video, the image that I selected for the video that you'll see on our channel, I selected that on purpose so that you guys could see a picture of what the outdoor Greek theaters kind of looked like. But they were divided into 4 distinct areas. The first one is the orchestra, which comes from the ancient Greek, and it roughly translates to the dancing space. And it was a circular area in front of where a lot of the play would be performed, where the chorus would come out, a large group of people, and they would speak directly to the audience from there. They would sing there, and they also would dance there. So that was the orchestra. Okay, so that's part one. Part two is the theatron. And theatron loosely translates to viewing place. So this was the place where you would sit to view the play, where the audience would be, okay? And it was usually built into the hillside, and it fanned out around the orchestra, okay? So it wasn't just straight on. So the audience, and normally they were up above that orchestra, which is why we call it an orchestra pit nowadays. So the audience could see the performers below, and they wouldn't be blocked by the other audience members directly in front of them because they were all sitting on a tilt. The large curve, like it was a large curve and like a bowl kind of a feeling when you were sitting in the theatron. And the large bowl-like structure also amplified the sound that the actors were speaking on stage naturally. So they didn't need microphones. They didn't need a big sound system because they built their theaters so that you could hear people at really, really far away because you were kind of in a big bowl. So it amplified the sound so that even the seats at the top of the hillside could still hear the actors speaking on stage. Okay, so number one, the orchestra. Number two, the theatron, spelled a little bit differently than theater. Theatron, theatron. Okay, number three, you guys ready? Is called the skene. Very close to our word scene, but this is skene. And the skene was an actual building that was placed behind the playing area to act as a backdrop for the play's events. And skenes often had real doors, real stairs, and many set decorations for the actors to use throughout the play. So instead of just a vinyl backdrop like we use in our plays all the time, they actually had a real building seated right behind the theater to use. And so that became the backdrop for the play. All right, number four, the last one, is called the parodos, spelled Parodos. And parodos were the passageways between the orchestra pit and the theatron, the big auditorium or where all the audience would sit. And they were very small little passageways that the audience would actually use these areas to enter and exit the theater. But also they were used by the actors. The chorus would come out, and often many messenger characters would make their entrances and exits from the parodos instead of on stage. And they would share their lines or share their bits of information, and they were much closer to the audience than the events of the story. So this was a really great way to grab people's attention. It was almost like an area in the audience, a little bit, called the parodos. Okay, so those are the four types. Those are the four areas of the Greek theater. So now I want to talk about these two styles of plays that they used to perform way back in the, like I said, 4th, 5th, 6th century BC. A long time ago. So first off, I'm going to talk about the structure of Greek tragedy. Okay, these were the more dramatic plays. They were more serious plays, and the structure of a Greek tragedy was relatively simple. The plays would begin with a prologue. There's a word that we still use today. A prologue speech given by the chorus to explain the background information of the characters and the setting of the play. So basically, they would give the audience a little rundown of who you're going to see in this play, who are the characters, and what the story is going to be. They would explain the whole story before the play even started so that the audience could follow along closely. Greek theater was very committed to making sure that the audience did not get lost in the story. So after the prologue speech, the stories of Greek tragedy were always based on myths and stories from the past. So they were kind of based on real events that had happened a long time ago, or myth events that people love to tell stories, over and over and over again. Then the next part of a Greek play after the prologue was called also the parados. Okay, named after those entrances and exits that I talked about. The parados, though, inside of a play was actually typically a song that was sung by the chorus to comment on the play's events and tell the audience what they should probably be thinking about these events. So we would have the prologue, then we would have the parados song, and then would come the first episode. Episode, whoa, there's another word that we use all the time today. And that first episode was where you would see a smaller group of actors. So the choruses were a huge number of actors. I've read, at least a dozen most of the time, up to, when they got really big productions, up to 50 actors in a chorus. Whoa, that is a huge cast. But once an episode started, inside the plays, they would focus on smaller groups of characters and actors, and they would perform the story's events. After each episode, there would be a choral ode, which is another form of song, and this song, the chorus would sing and also dance. So they would kind of build up the spectacle that they were offering. Once again, mythology would be the framework for most of the songs and the dances as well. And then they would alternate episodes and choral odes. And that would continue until the entire story got told that evening. And then the play would end with the Exodus. There's another word that we use all the time. And this would be a wrapping up of the play's events, and in a song format typically. And also you would see all of the characters exit the theater. And they often offered the moral of the story, or they summed up the wisdom that they wanted the audience to take away. So there is this very simple structure of a Greek tragedy. Okay, so how about a Greek comedy? I don't know. I wonder if they'll be similar or different. I wonder if you guys are following along and wondering the same things at home. Well, I will tell you, unlike Greek tragedies, comedies were based on current events. Okay? So comedies were not trying to tell the stories of the past. They were trying to draw their inspiration from what was going on in that year or that time frame, much more current events. The first part of comedies was typically the parados song, and the chorus performers would wear crazy costumes. Some examples are like bees with giant stingers, or huge kitchen utensils, and they would perform a number of parados songs to start off a comedy, and they would also feature dance routines right from the start. Okay, so the Greek tragedy had a much slower start, but the comedy, man, they grabbed you right away. The second part of the comedy was called the Agon, A-G-O-N, and it was a witty debate featuring a few of the main actors, and they would often poke and make fun of current politicians or famous people of their towns. The scenes inside of a Greek comedy would change very fast, and the actors also were speculated to do some forms of improvisation. Another word that we use all the time and we know quite well because we improv all the time in our acting classes. Because the audience could not see the facial expressions of the actors because they were normally seated very far away, the use of the actors' voices and gestures were incredibly important. And the actors would poke fun at local politicians. Oh yeah, I already said that. I jumped ahead. The actors would poke fun at local politicians and well-known citizens of the day, who may have even been in the audiences. The third part, so we've got parados songs that started off, then we've got the agon, which is the witty debate part of the comedy, and then the third part is called the parabasis, spelled P-A-R-A-B-A-S-I-S. And the parabasis was when the chorus came out into the orchestra and they would speak directly to the audience about basically why they thought this was funny and what they should be taking away with them. And then this would be wrapped up by another exodus, which was a lot in the similar way to the tragedy. The Exodus was a lively song and dance routine that would feature all of the actors leaving the theater space. The Greek theater took their comedies and their tragedies very seriously. And they would hold competitions for the best new plays and the new productions. And they even, this one is a bit of history that is debated a lot, but I think it's kind of interesting. It is speculated that they even held award ceremonies after these competitions. Oh my gosh, you guys. Just like we see with the Golden Globes and the Oscars and all that kind of stuff in film, and the Tonys for theater in New York, they even hold award ceremonies all the way back in Greek theater, you guys. So I wanted to talk about this particular period of theater because everything that we do in the theater is really built upon what the Greek theater started. It's not like we perform Greek theater plays that often nowadays, although that when they are performed, they can be really, really fun. I've seen Oedipus Rex, and I've seen a couple of Greek comedies that I'm forgetting the names of right now, and they're very, very interesting when they're produced by modern day theater companies. But I wanted to talk about these things today because I hope that you all recognized several familiar words that we use all the time today to talk about theater. And I wanted to, bring your attention to their origins and how long we've been doing theater on this planet. It's pretty amazing. It is quite a long tradition that we all take part in together. So there is my little spiel on Greek theater. I hope that you guys learned something that you didn't know, perhaps, about the Greek theater, or at least I hope you were reminded about something that you already knew, but you maybe hadn't thought about in a little while. Or maybe you connected some new dots about, like, oh, wow, the word episodes actually comes from Greek theater from the 6th century. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's pretty cool. History is pretty cool. And the history of theater is a really, really fun one to investigate. So I think that will conclude our history of theater segments for a little while at least, and I'll try to do something a little bit more interactive. I know that's going to be really tricky. Next time around, though, I'm going to try to do a couple of things that I typically do as an actor when I'm preparing for roles, and I'll try to share that with you guys and think of some ways that you can try to do a few of these things for yourselves at home. So that's what we got for us next week. But I hope you enjoyed today's lesson on the Greek theater and that you learned something cool. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and stay safe, stay healthy, stay at home, and I'm sure you all are doing well. Bye.